All right. Well, welcome to Numbers chapter 11. There's two major principles we get to learn today in here that we can still use in our world today, which is awesome. So let's talk about this. Fire from the Lord consumes the rebels in Israel. Israel murmurs and lusts for meat instead of manna. Moses complains that he cannot bear the burden alone. He is commanded to choose 70 elders to assist him. The Lord promises meat until it becomes loathsome to the Israelites. 70 elders are chosen. They prophesy, the Lord comes down. Eldad and Medad prophesy in the camp. Israel is provided with quail. The people lust. A great plague follows. Many die. That's a pretty good summary of this chapter. So a lot of cool little things we get to learn. Okay, so let's begin on this. Verse 1, when the people complained, it displeased the Lord. And the Lord heard it, and his anger was kindled, and the fire of the Lord burnt among them and consumed them that were in the uttermost parts of the camp. And people cried unto Moses, and when Moses prayed unto the Lord, the fire was quenched. He called the name of the place Taberah, because the fire of the Lord burnt among them. So now we've got the children of Israel, okay? They're traveling through the land. They've left Sinai. They're heading up to the land of Paran. They are murmuring. They're complaining about what's going on, even though God is providing them basically all their food and water and things, providing for their substance and helping them out. They're complaining. This is so common. We oftentimes have this tendency to take what is given. When it's first given, it's a miracle. It's amazing. But after a while, we get used to it, and then we complain because it becomes the normal, and we want more than the normal. So that is a problem. Now, the Lord dealt with these people pretty quick back then, where fire would just come out of the tabernacle and zap you, and you're gone. That's pretty crazy to think about. That's talking about swift judgment. Okay, now verse 4, and the mixed multitude that was among them fell a-lusting. And the children of Israel also wept again and said, who shall give us flesh to eat? So the challenge was here is there's mixtures, there's other people in with them, and they're going, who gives us flesh to eat? Because remember, they're surviving on manna. This is a special type of food that's coming from heaven that they can only gather so much to have their enough for the day, and that's it. And they're like, oh, we want meat, we want fish. In fact, that's verse 5, we remember the fish which we did eat in Egypt freely, the cucumbers and the melons and the leeks and the onions and the garlic. But now our soul is dried away. There is nothing at all besides this manna before our eyes. And the manna was as coriander seed, and the color thereof was the color of bdellium. Coriander seed is kind of a darker seed. You can get the spice. Coriander is a common spice that you can get. It's a good flavor, but I don't know if I would say it's like by itself, not good to eat. So these people had got to the point where they're like, oh, I'm just so sick of this free food, this manna. Oh, we have to have manna every day. Oh, we want fish. We want variety. We want cucumbers and other things. And so verse 8, and the people went about and gathered it and ground it in mills or beat it in a mortar and baked it in pans and made cakes of it. The taste of it was the taste of fresh oil, which is pretty good. And when the dew fell upon the camp in the night, the manna fell upon it. So they had free food. They didn't have to go raise crops. They didn't have to forage for this food. They literally woke up and it's on the ground. They just got to go pick it up. That's it. The only rules were you could only pick up so much. Anything above that would spoil and go bad. And you couldn't keep it, save it up, get it, build up a storage of it over time. You just had to use it and then get rid of it each day. So crazy. Free food, and they're complaining about it. Granted, if you're eating the same thing every day, that would over time feel kind of like blah. Because again, it's like at first it's novel. Oh, we're going to starve to death. Oh, look, God is providing this miracle of food for us every morning. And after a while, you're like, okay, I'm sick of this free food. I want something else. So what used to be amazing eventually becomes commonplace. And when it becomes commonplace, it becomes less valued. So it's important to look at what are the things we don't value in the gospel or in the church, and realize that at some point those were miracles. Those were amazing things, but it's just commonplace to us today. like the Book of Mormon. That was an amazing book in Joseph Smith's day. Everybody read it, which is why we got the Pearl of Great Price as a reward for the people actually studying the Book of Mormon. Now we have the Book of Mormon everywhere and nobody reads it anymore. So we're taking it for granted, which is bad. That's a sign we need to be better at what we're doing when we start to take it for granted. Okay, verse 10, then Moses heard the people weep throughout their families, every man in the door of his tent, and the anger of the Lord was kindled greatly. Moses was also displeased, and Moses said unto the Lord, wherefore hast thou afflicted thy servant? Wherefore have I not found favor in thy sight, and that thou layest the burden of all this people upon me? Have I conceived all this people? Have I begotten them, that they should say unto me, carry them in thy bosom, as a nursing father beareth a sucking child, unto the land which thou swarest unto their fathers? Whence should I have flesh to give unto all this people? For they weep unto me, saying, give us flesh that we may eat. I am not able to bear all this people alone, because it is too heavy for me. So Moses is complaining a little bit too, going, these guys are just driving me insane with their requests. What am I to do? I'm one guy. Am I supposed to bear all the burdens and problems of these people? What's going on? So in verse 15, if thou deal thus with me, kill me, I pray thee, out of hand. If I have found favor in thy sight, let me not see my wretchedness. So Moses is like, look, I need help. This is crazy. These people are nuts. They've got problems. They're griping, complaining about stuff, and I've had it. These people are nuts. So a revelation comes. Continuing revelation is important. Verse 16, and the Lord said unto Moses, gather unto me 70 men of the elders of Israel, whom thou knowest to be the elders of the people, and officers over them, and bring them unto the tabernacle of the congregation, that they may stand there with thee. And I will come down and talk with thee there, and I will take of the Spirit which is upon thee, and will put it upon them, and they shall bear the burden of the people with thee, that thou bear it not thyself alone. So there is now an extension of the organization of the church to a group called the Quorum of the 70. Okay, if remember, we talked a little bit about this in the past, after Moses got the 10 Commandments and things. They talked about some of the church organization. So now they're calling these 70 men in, very holy men who have high integrity, and they are then given as it says in here, I will put it upon them, the Spirit which is upon thee. So they will get a similar priesthood, responsibility that Moses has for the people. And now those 70, will collectively help Moses deal with the children of Israel. Now, verse 18, say unto the people, sanctify yourselves against tomorrow, and ye shall eat flesh. For ye have wept in the ears of the Lord, saying, who shall give us flesh to eat? For it was well with us in Egypt. Therefore the Lord will give you flesh, and ye shall eat. So God they're asking for help. God is saying, okay, here's what we're going to do. If you sanctify yourselves, prepare yourselves, tomorrow you will eat flesh. I understand it's not a bad thing to have flesh. You guys are asking for it, so I'm going to help you. So always remember those scriptures of when you ask, you shall receive. This is what's going on here, okay? Verse 19, ye shall not eat 1 day, nor 2 days, nor 5 days, neither 10 nor 20, but even the whole month, until it come out your nostrils, and it be loathsome unto you. So it's like, look, you're going to have so much meat, it's going to come out your nose, that you're going to eat so much meat. Because that ye have despised the Lord which is among you, and have wept before him, saying, why came we forth out of Egypt? So asking God for help, even not necessarily, I said complaining, but really asking God for help, he does answer. He does answer and help us out. So verse 21, Moses said, the people among whom I am are 600,000 footmen. Remember, that's just the men 25 years and older. So that's not counting anybody younger than 25 years. That's not counting women either. So that's why we get around 1 million to 1.2 million people. So he says, thou hast said, I will give them flesh that they may eat a whole month. Shall the flocks and herds be slain for them to suffice them? Or shall all the fish of the sea be gathered together for them to suffice them? Excuse me. So Moses is asking, how is this going to be done? Are all of our animals going to be killed and everybody's going to be eating them? Or all of a sudden we're going to get a bunch of fish out of the sea and they're going to feed us? What's the deal? Verse 23, and the Lord said unto Moses, is the Lord's hand waxed short? Thou shalt see now whether my word shall come to pass unto thee or not. So the Lord in verse 23 is basically going, look, am I going to leave you shortchanged? If I ever wronged you on this, Moses, I will take care of it. Just watch. So verse 24, and Moses went out and told the people the words of the Lord, and gathered the 70 men of the elders of the people, and set them round about the tabernacle. And the Lord came down in a cloud, and spake unto him, and took the spirit that was upon him, Moses, and gave it unto the 70 elders. And it came to pass that when the spirit rested upon them, they prophesied and did not cease. So they were given the spirit of prophecy. They would have this ability to officiate and do things similar like Moses. Verse 26, but there remained 2 of the men in the camp. The name of one was Eldad, and the name of the other Medad. And the Spirit rested upon them, and they were of them that were written, but went not out unto the tabernacle. And they prophesied in the camp. So they were called, but they didn't show up at the tabernacle. But they still got, the Spirit rested upon them, and they were set apart, basically. And there ran a young man and told Moses and said, Eldad and Medad do prophesy in the camp. Verse 28, and Joshua, the son of Nun, the servant of Moses, one of his young men, answered and said, my Lord Moses, forbid them. So Joshua's going, hey, they weren't here, part of this group, so we need to stop them from prophesying. In verse 29, and Moses said unto him, enviest thou for my sake? Would God that all the Lord's people were prophets, and that the Lord would put his spirit upon them. So what's going on here is, Joshua's like, wait a minute, they didn't follow the procedure everybody else did, so we need to stop them from prophesying because maybe it's not the right thing. And Moses says, look, they were fine, okay? And Moses makes this point, and this is a very, very important point that is still in applicable use today in the gospel, and that is, he says, would God that all the Lord's people were prophets. Moses' main thing that he really, really, really wanted to do with the children of Israel is help them to be able to commune with God as much as he was. Raise them to the level he was at so they all could talk with God at any time. Enoch did this in the city of Enoch. They got to the point where Jesus would actually come down and live among the people. He not live necessarily like have a house and a family and stuff, but he would walk among them. He was in the city walking around. So the point of the gospel isn't to say we're going to follow one person. The point of the gospel is to use that one person's advice to help us to come to Christ ourselves. If we all come to Christ, there's technically not much of a need for a prophet, other than to do general work and more administrative stuff. But if we all seek God, all revelations can be given to us as well. Now, that doesn't mean that you can get revelations for things that the prophet can't. He'll still get the revelations for the whole church. But there's no revelation a prophet gets that you cannot understand and seek the Spirit on. Like Nephi did when his father had his vision, basically. That's the point of the gospel, is to help us gain such a close relationship with Christ that we don't necessarily need a prophet to teach us how to come to Christ. Okay, the prophet just becomes more administrative at that point because we have a close relationship with Christ ourselves. That's the ultimate goal. And that's what we always need to be striving for. Very, very important point. All right, let's finish this out because there's a little bit more to this story that's pretty crazy. Verse 30, Moses gat him into the camp, he and the elders of Israel. And there went forth a wind from the Lord and brought quails from the sea and let them fall by the camp, as it were a day's journey on this side, and as it were a day's journey on the other side, around about the camp, as it were 2 cubits high upon the face of the earth. That's a lot of quail, 2 cubits high. I believe that's somewhere around a couple of feet tall. So there's that many quail that you could walk in a day's journey in any direction and still find quail. That's a lot. And they were deep in quail, not just a few here and there. Like they were stacked on top of each other. There was so much quail. So they had an opportunity to eat quail. Verse 32, the people stood up all that day and all that night and all the next day, and they gathered the quails. He that gathered least gathered 10 homers, and they spread them all abroad for themselves round about the camp. So when they were eating, talk about the 10 homers, they were eating like the least amount of quail gathered was a bushel of quail. You've got probably a bushel's 20 to 30 quail. That's a lot of meat. That's a lot of meat. If you eat one quail a day, you've got a month's worth of meat on top of the manna as well. So that's pretty amazing. If you remember, we heard just a little bit about this story back, I believe it was in the book of Exodus. They talked about it just briefly, and now we're getting more story about it. So if you ever hear like it feels redundant in the scriptures, it's because we're getting more of the story. They kind of go back and retell stories and give us more details in different sections later on. So that's kind of what's happening here, basically. Verse 33, while the flesh was yet between their teeth, ere it was chewed, the wrath of the Lord was kindled against the people. The Lord smote people with a very great plague. Now, what this was, he didn't just go, you know what, I'm going to give you a plague. You're gone. What happened was basically they gathered too much meat. They were gluttonous with the quail, and they took too much and didn't honor what the Lord had told them. And so he's mad now because they've ruined the blessing that he has given them, basically. And a plague came upon them. Verse 34, and he called the name of that place Kibroth Hattaavah, because there they buried the people that lusted. And the people journeyed from Kibroth Hattaavah unto Hazeroth, and abode at Hazeroth. So there's a plague. A lot of people died. We don't know how many died, but the people that lusted. So they went after and tried to do more than they needed to for their family as far as gathering the quail. So the people tried to get way more than they needed. They tried to lust after the flesh and get more than they needed to, basically, than they should have. Those are the people that died in the plague. So that's it's crazy to think about. The Lord gives us guidelines, and so we shouldn't try to get more than we should. It doesn't mean you shouldn't have an ambition and try to go for things and strive for stuff. But realize if there are boundaries and guidelines set for things, we need to be careful not to let our lusts get the better of us and cause crazy problems for us because of it. That's what's been going on here, basically. So some fun stories we get to learn. Remember, the point of the gospel is to help us gain a personal relationship with Christ. So once we get to the point where we can talk to Christ ourselves, the second comforter, we don't need a prophet as much because we can talk to Christ himself. So the prophet's important from an administrative standpoint of the church, but not from a revelatory standpoint of helping you come to Christ. Because the whole point of a prophet is to help you come to Christ. Once you can come to Christ the same as him, then you don't necessarily need him as much in your life, which is fine. Because that's the ultimate goal, is to come to Christ ourselves. A prophet is a means to an end. It's a tool or a crutch to help us with our low faith until we gain the faith to be with Christ ourselves in person. Then we don't necessarily need a prophet as much because we can go to Christ directly. That's the point of the whole gospel. That's what we should be striving for in everything that we do. Thanks for watching. We'll look forward to seeing you in the next video.